What would you do if you found a text message that destroyed everything you believed in? Emma Hayes thought she had it all: a successful career, a loving husband of 10 years, and a beautiful son. Her best friend Claire had been by her side since college, through every milestone, every triumph, every struggle. But one rainy September night, a single text message shattered that illusion. Rooms booked, same place. Don't let her suspect anything. The sender, her best friend of 20 years. The recipient, her husband. What Emma did next would surprise everyone. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't confront them. Instead, she did what she does best: she investigated. Like a financial controller tracking down fraud, she documented every lie, every hotel receipt, every stolen moment. For weeks, she lived a double life: the trusting wife by day, the silent investigator by night. And what she uncovered was far worse than a simple affair. This is a story about betrayal, resilience, and the quiet strength it takes to walk away with your dignity intact. This is Emma's story. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever had to rebuild from nothing, or if you simply believe in the power of self-respect over revenge, this story is for you. Before we begin, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful, real-life inspired stories about courage, healing, and finding strength in the darkest moments. Ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now let's dive into Emma's journey from heartbreak to healing. Rooms booked. Don't let her suspect. Text message that ended my 10-year marriage. The rain started just after 6. I stood at the kitchen window watching water streak down the glass in uneven lines, like tears that couldn't quite find their path. Portland in September always felt like this, caught between summer's last warmth and autumn's creeping cold. The city couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Neither could I. My name is Emma Hayes. I'm 35 years old. I'm a senior financial controller at a mid-sized e-commerce company downtown. I've been married for 10 years to a man who used to make me laugh until my stomach hurt. We have a 7-year-old son named Oliver who still believes in magic and thinks his mother hung the moon. From the outside, my life looks like something worth envying. From the inside, it feels like a house with good bones, but drafty windows solid enough to stand but never quite warm enough to call home. I didn't realize how cold I'd become until the night I found the message. Daniel came home late that Thursday. This wasn't unusual. He ran Hayes Interior Design, a company he'd built from nothing into something that mattered. CEO, that's what his business card said. What they didn't say was that being CEO meant 12-hour days, client dinners that stretched past midnight, and a wife who ate dinner alone more nights than not. I heard his key in the lock just before 10. The sound of rain had been my only company for hours, aside from Oliver's soft breathing from upstairs, where he'd fallen asleep during his 3rd chapter of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. "Emma," Daniel's voice carried from the entryway. "Kitchen," I called back. He appeared in the doorway, his dark hair damp, his tie loosened. There was a weariness in his eyes that had become permanent somewhere around year 7 of our marriage. Or maybe I just hadn't noticed it before then. "Sorry I'm late. The meeting with the developers ran long." I nodded, wiping my hands on a towel. "There's pasta in the fridge if you're hungry." I ate with the clients. He set his briefcase down, pulled off his jacket. "How was Oliver?" "Good. We finished his science project. The solar system model. The one due next week. The one due tomorrow." A flicker of something crossed his face, guilt maybe, or just exhaustion. "I meant to help with that." "I know." The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was worse than that. It was familiar, comfortable, the kind of silence that settles into a marriage like dust, so gradual you don't notice until you're breathing it in with every word you don't say. "I'm going to shower," Daniel said. He walked past me, and I caught the faint smell of rain and something else, perfume maybe, though I couldn't be sure. I told myself it was nothing. Told myself a lot of things had been nothing for a long time now. I heard the bathroom door close upstairs. The pipes groaned as the shower started. That's when I saw his phone. He'd left it on the kitchen counter, face up beside his keys. The screen was dark, but as I reached for a dish towel, it lit up with a notification. I wasn't the kind of wife who checked her husband's phone. I'd never been jealous or suspicious. Trust was something I'd always given freely, perhaps too freely, like a child handing out candy on Halloween without checking who was behind the mask. But something made me look. Maybe it was the perfume I thought I'd smelled. Maybe it was the way Daniel had avoided my eyes when he mentioned the client dinner. Maybe it was just instinct, that animal part of the brain that knows when a predator is near, even when you can't see it yet. The message appeared on the lock screen in white letters against the black background. Rooms booked. Same place. Get there first. Don't let her suspect anything. The sender's name was just a letter C. I knew immediately who it was. Claire Morgan. My best friend since college. The woman who'd held my hair back when I was sick during finals week. The woman who'd stood beside me at my wedding wearing lavender and crying happy tears. The woman who'd been the first person outside of family to hold Oliver when he was born, who'd whispered to him, "Your mama is the strongest person I know." Claire, who worked as marketing director at Daniel's company. Claire, who'd moved to Portland 3 years ago and said it was because she needed a fresh start. Claire, who'd been to our house for dinner at least twice a month for the past year. I stared at the message until the screen went dark again. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. I felt nothing at first, just a strange emptiness, like someone had reached into my chest and scooped out everything that used to live there. Then the numbness cracked, and underneath it was something sharp and cold. I set the phone back exactly where Daniel had left it. I dried my hands, carefully folded the towel. Upstairs, the shower was still running. I walked to the living room and sat down on the couch in the dark. Outside, the rain continued its relentless rhythm against the windows. Inside, I counted my breaths. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Something my therapist had taught me years ago after my mother died. A way to stay grounded when the world tilted sideways. The world was tilting now. Daniel emerged from the shower 20 minutes later, his hair damp, wearing sweatpants and an old college t-shirt. He found me in the living room, sitting in the dark. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired," I said. He nodded, grabbed his phone from the kitchen, and disappeared into his office to check a few emails before bed. I sat there in the dark for another hour after he'd gone upstairs. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't do anything at all except sit and breathe and feel something inside me begin to calcify into something harder than bone. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside my husband in the bed we'd shared for 10 years, listening to him breathe, watching the shadows move across the ceiling. Every few hours, his phone would light up on the nightstand, and I'd see the glow reflected in the mirror across the room. I wondered how many messages I hadn't seen, how many times they'd texted while I was in the next room, while I was making dinner, while I was reading to our son. When dawn finally came gray and reluctant, I got up carefully so as not to wake Daniel. I went downstairs and made coffee, made Oliver's breakfast, packed his lunch with the little notes I always included. "Have a great day, sweetheart. Mom loves you." Daniel came down at 7:30, already dressed for work. "Morning," he said, kissing the top of my head in that absent way he'd developed over the years. "Morning." He poured coffee, checked his phone, smiled at something on the screen. I watched him and felt nothing but that same cold emptiness. "I've got back-to-back meetings today," he said. "Probably won't be home until late." "Okay. There's a dinner with potential investors, Japanese clients. Big deal." "I understand." He looked at me, then really looked, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes. Concern maybe, or guilt. "You sure you're all right?" I smiled. I was good at smiling. I'd been practicing for years. "I'm fine, just didn't sleep well." He nodded, relieved to be let off the hook. "Get some rest today if you can." Then he was gone, and it was just me and Oliver, and the sound of rain that had never really stopped. Right. I took Oliver to school that morning like I did every morning. I held his hand crossing the parking lot. I crouched down to zip his jacket all the way up. "Mom," he said with that 7-year-old exasperation. "I can do it myself." "I know you can," I said, "but humor me." He grinned, showing the gap where he'd lost a tooth last week. Then he hugged me tight around the neck the way he always did, and ran off to join his friends by the playground. I watched him go and thought, I have to protect this. Whatever happens, I have to protect him. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to confront Daniel. Not yet. I wasn't going to call Claire and scream at her, wasn't going to throw things or make a scene or do any of the things that seemed reasonable in the moment but would feel like weakness later. I was going to do what I did best. I was going to investigate. I was a financial controller. My entire career was built on finding inconsistencies, tracking down discrepancies, following paper trails until they led to the truth. I knew how to look at numbers and see the story they were telling. I knew how to spot a lie hidden in a spreadsheet. A marriage was just another kind of accounting, and I had a feeling the books weren't going to balance. Tim, I started small. That first day I went through our credit card statements. Online banking made it easy. I had access to everything: our joint account, the business credit card Daniel used for company expenses, even his personal card that he thought was separate. Nothing immediately suspicious. Dinners at nice restaurants, but always with multiple entrees, plausibly business meetings. Hotel charges, but always in cities where he had clients. Gas station purchases scattered throughout the city. But then I noticed something. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, there was a charge to the same boutique hotel in downtown Portland. The Maxwell, a place known for discretion where rooms had separate entrances and the front desk didn't ask questions. The charges were always coded as business expenses. The dates didn't match any business trips I knew about. I pulled up Daniel's calendar, the one he'd shared with me years ago, so I'd know when he'd be late, when he'd be traveling. I cross-referenced the hotel charges with his calendar entries. Every single time there was a charge at the Maxwell, Daniel's calendar showed late meeting or client dinner or working late at office. Never specific, never detailed, just vague enough to be believable. I opened a new spreadsheet and began documenting everything. Date, time, amount, calendar entry, location. I didn't feel sad as I worked. I didn't feel angry. I just felt focused, like I'd been given a puzzle to solve, and I was good at puzzles. By the end of the first week, I had a pattern. Every other Thursday, like clockwork, for the past 8 months. 8 months. I sat back in my chair and stared at the spreadsheet. 8 months of lies. 8 months of late meetings. 8 months of coming home and kissing my forehead and asking about my day while he still had the smell of her on his skin. That's when I felt it, not anger, not yet, but something colder. Something that settled into my bones like frost. I didn't confront him that Thursday when he came home at 11, claiming the investor dinner had run long. Instead, I smiled. I asked how it went. I listened to him talk about the Japanese clients and their interest in expanding to the West Coast. I was pleasant, supportive, everything a good wife should be. And the next morning, I installed a location-sharing app on his phone while he was in the shower. It was easy. We'd had the app for years, Find My Device, the kind of thing couples use when they want to check if the other person is stuck in traffic or already at the restaurant. We'd set it up when Oliver was a baby and we were both exhausted and forgetful, always misplacing our phones. Daniel had forgotten it was there. I hadn't. I reactivated my access and set the notifications to silent. Now I could see exactly where he was at any given moment, and he'd never know I was watching. That night when Daniel said he was working late at the office, I watched the blue dot that represented him on my phone screen. He wasn't at the office. He was at the Maxwell Hotel. I sat on the couch with my phone in my lap, watching that blue dot stay perfectly still for 3 hours. Oliver was upstairs doing homework. I could hear him singing to himself, making up lyrics to songs that didn't exist. My husband was 3 miles away in a hotel room with my best friend, and I sat there in my living room perfectly calm and took a screenshot. Added it to my spreadsheet. Evidence. That's all this was. Just evidence. When Daniel came home at 10:30, I was watching television with the sound low. "Hey," he said softly, loosening his tie. "You're still up?" "Couldn't sleep," I said. "How was work?" "Exhausting. We're behind on the Riverside project. Had to stay late to go over the numbers." "That's tough," I said. He kissed my forehead. "I'm going to grab a quick shower and head to bed." "Okay." I listened to him climb the stairs, listened to the water start running. Then I looked at my phone and opened the folder I'd created. Labeled it Project Phoenix. Phoenix, rising from ashes. That's what I'd be when this was over. The next morning I did something I'd never done before. I called Claire. "Emma." Her voice was bright warm, exactly like it had always been. "Hey, stranger, I was just thinking about you. Were you—" I kept my voice light, friendly. "Yeah, it's been too long since we got together. Want to grab lunch this week?" "I'd love that," I said, and I meant it. Not because I wanted to see her, but because I wanted to watch her, to see if she'd slip, to see if guilt showed on her face. "Wednesday," she suggested. "Perfect. How about that Italian place on Division Giovanni's? Love it. Noon. See you then?" I hung up and stared at my phone. I was going to have lunch with the woman who was sleeping with my husband. I was going to smile and laugh and order wine and make small talk. And the whole time I'd be watching, listening, collecting. Because I needed to know everything before I made my move. I needed to know how deep this went, how long it had really been going on, whether they were just physical, or if there was something more. Something that might make them think they had a future together. I needed evidence that would be irrefutable, not because I planned to stay, but because I wanted them both to know that I knew. That I'd seen every lie, that I'd documented every betrayal, and when I left, I wanted to leave them with no illusions about why. Wednesday came. I dressed carefully that morning. Nothing too formal, nothing that would suggest I was trying too hard. Just dark jeans, a soft gray sweater, minimal jewelry. I looked at myself in the mirror and practiced my smile until it looked genuine. "You look pretty, Mom," Oliver said at breakfast. "Thank you, sweetheart." "Are you going somewhere special?" "Just lunch with Aunt Claire." His face lit up. He loved Claire. She always brought him little gifts when she visited comic books, action figures, once a remote control car that he'd crashed into the couch within an hour. "Tell her I said hi," he said. "I will." Daniel had already left for work. He'd been distracted that morning, checking his phone, constantly smiling at messages I couldn't see. I wondered if he was texting her, making plans for their next meeting, counting down the hours. I dropped Oliver at school and drove to the restaurant. Claire was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table by the window. She waved when she saw me, her whole face brightening. She looked beautiful. She always had been tall with that effortless elegance some women are born with. Auburn hair that caught the light. Green eyes that seemed to see right through you. Or maybe I'd just never noticed that she'd been looking at my life the whole time, deciding which pieces she wanted to take. "Emma," she stood to hug me, and I let her. I even hugged back, feeling her arms around me, smelling her perfume. The same perfume I'd smelled on Daniel. "You look amazing," she said as we sat down. "How do you do it, work mom life, and you still look like you just stepped out of a spa?" "You're sweet," I said. "You're the one who looks amazing. That dress is gorgeous." "This old thing." She laughed, pleased. "I got it on sale." We ordered wine, made small talk about work, about the weather, about a new coffee shop that had opened nearby. And the whole time I watched her. I watched the way she checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she smiled at messages that made her eyes soften. The way she'd glance at her watch as if she had somewhere better to be. "So," she said, leaning forward, "how are things with you and Daniel?" The question caught me off guard. Not because it was unusual we'd talked about our lives for 20 years, but because of the way she asked it. Casual. Almost too casual. Like she already knew the answer. "Good, I said smoothly. "Busy, you know how it is. His company's doing well." "That's great." She sipped her wine. "He works so hard." "He does. Too hard sometimes, I bet. I see him at the office late all the time. I keep telling him he needs to delegate more." "You're probably right." She tilted her head, studying me. "You two are happy, though." And there it was. The question under the question. Are you paying attention to your marriage? Do you notice what's slipping through your fingers? Do you see what I see? I smiled. "We're good. 10 years and still going strong." Something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe, or something darker. "That's wonderful," she said. "You're lucky. Not everyone gets that." "No," I agreed. "Not everyone does." We finished lunch, split the bill, hugged goodbye on the sidewalk. "We should do this more often," Claire said. "I've missed you." "Me too," I lied. I watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the wet pavement, her phone already out, her fingers moving across the screen. Texting him probably, telling him about lunch, laughing about how clueless I was. I got in my car and sat there for a long moment. Then I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed Wednesday, October 4th. Lunch with Claire. She asked about my marriage. Wanted to know if we were happy. Seemed disappointed when I said yes. Conclusion, she's measuring. Seeing if there's space for her. Seeing if I'm a threat. Note, she's not as good at hiding it as she thinks. I drove home and added the note to my spreadsheet. The pattern was becoming clearer. The evidence was mounting. Soon I'd have everything I needed, and then I'd decide what to do with it. That night after Oliver was in bed, I did something I'd been putting off. I opened Daniel's laptop. He'd left it on the kitchen table unlocked, still logged into his email. He did this sometimes when he was tired, when he'd been working late and couldn't be bothered to shut everything down properly. Usually I didn't look. I respected his privacy just like he respected mine. But privacy was a luxury for people who had nothing to hide. And Daniel, I was learning, had been hiding quite a lot. I scrolled through his inbox slowly, methodically. Most of it was work project updates, client communications invoices, nothing unusual. But then I found a folder I'd never seen before, labeled simply R&D, Research and Development. Plausible enough for a design company. I clicked on it. Inside were emails between Daniel and Claire, dozens of them, going back not 8 months, but 14. 14 months, over a year. I'd been wrong. This had been going on longer than I'd thought. I started reading. At first, the emails were innocuous, project discussions, meeting notes, brainstorming sessions. But around month 3, the tone shifted. Thanks for staying late tonight. I needed that conversation. Anytime. You know I'm here for you. Emma doesn't really understand this part of the business. It's nice to talk to someone who gets it. My hands tightened on the laptop. The emails got more frequent, more personal. I can't stop thinking about what you said yesterday. Me neither. We should probably talk about this in person. And then from 6 months ago, last night was a mistake. Was it? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore, except that when I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe. I read that line 3 times. When I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe. I thought about all the times I'd told Daniel he didn't have to be strong all the time. All the times I'd tried to be his partner, his support, his safe place. And apparently I'd failed. Or maybe he'd never wanted safety from me. Maybe he'd wanted something else. Something I couldn't give because I was too busy being strong myself. I kept scrolling. The emails became more coded after that. References to meetings that I now knew were hotel rooms. References to the project that was clearly code for their affair. But then I found something else. Attached to an email from 3 months ago was a document. I opened it. It was a business proposal. Morgan Hayes Development, LLC, a real estate development company, a partnership between Claire Morgan and Daniel Hayes. I stared at the screen. This wasn't just an affair. They were planning a future together, a business, a partnership that would tie them together legally, financially, permanently. I scrolled through the proposal. It was detailed, professional. They'd been planning this for months, and the financial projections they were based on market research I recognized. Because I'd done that research. 6 months ago, Daniel had asked me to look into the Portland real estate market for a potential client. I'd spent weeks compiling data, analyzing trends, creating forecasts. I'd handed him a detailed report, and he'd given it to Claire. They'd used my work, my expertise, my hours of research to build their future together. I closed the laptop carefully, set it back exactly where I'd found it. Then I walked upstairs to the bathroom, closed the door, turned on the fan, and finally let myself cry. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I was so fucking angry. The next morning I called my sister. Lily answered on the 3rd ring. Emma, everything okay? Can we meet for coffee? There was a pause. Lily knew me well enough to hear what I wasn't saying. When now? I'll be there in 20. We met at a small cafe near her apartment in Northeast Portland. Lily arrived with her daughter Mia in tow, 4 years old, all wild curls and endless energy. Go pick out a cookie, baby, Lily told her, handing her a $5 bill. We watched Mia run to the counter, then Lily turned to me. What's wrong? I'd planned to ease into it, to find the right words. Instead, I said, Daniel's having an affair with Claire. Lily's face went very still. Fuck. Yeah. How long have you known? A week, maybe 2. I don't even know anymore. She reached across the table and took my hand. Hers was warm, solid, real. I'm so sorry, she said. There's more. I took a breath. Remember 6 months ago when you said you saw them together at that coffee shop, and I told you that you were wrong, that Claire would never... Lily's expression shifted. Emma, you were right. I should have listened. Don't do that, she said fiercely. Don't blame yourself for trusting people you loved. I didn't just trust them. I defended them. To you. You tried to warn me and I made you feel crazy. Because that's what manipulative people do, Lily said. They make you doubt everyone except them. That's not on you. That's on them. Mia came back with a chocolate chip cookie the size of her head. Lily helped her break it into pieces, and we sat there for a moment watching her eat with that total unselfconscious joy that only small children possess. "What are you going to do?" Lily asked quietly. "I don't know yet," I said. "But I'm not going to blow up. I'm not going to scream and throw things and make a scene. I'm going to be smart about this." Lily studied me. "You're gathering evidence." "Yes." "How much do you have?" "Enough to prove they've been lying. Not enough to prove how far it goes." "What else do you need?" I looked at my little sister, 30 years old, divorced, raising a daughter alone after her husband had left her for a woman he'd met at the gym. She'd survived that. She'd rebuilt. "I need to know if they're planning to leave me," I said. "Both of them. I need to know if this is just physical or if they're actually building something together. And when you know, then I'll decide how to end it." Lily nodded slowly. "Do you want me to come over? Stay with you for a few days?" "Not yet. I need to keep everything normal for now, for Oliver's sake. And because the moment they realize I know, I lose my advantage." "Okay." She squeezed my hand. "But the second you need me, I'm there. Middle of the night doesn't matter. You call." "I will." We sat there for a while longer, drinking coffee, watching Mia talking about nothing important. And for a little while I felt almost normal again. But when I left and drove home, the weight settled back onto my chest like a stone. I had more work to do. The thing about discovering betrayal is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every smile becomes a calculation. Every "I love you" becomes a question mark. Every touch feels like a performance, and you're the only one in the audience who knows the actor is reading from a script. I spent the next 2 weeks living inside a lie I'd built to protect myself, the lie that everything was fine, that I suspected nothing, that I was still the trusting wife who believed every word that came out of my husband's mouth. It was exhausting, but it was also clarifying, because the more I watched, the more I saw. And the more I saw, the angrier I became. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger that burns itself out quickly, but the cold, patient kind that hardens into something unbreakable. I continued tracking Daniel's location. Every Thursday, like clockwork, that blue dot moved to the Maxwell Hotel and stayed there for 3 hours, sometimes 4. I continued monitoring our finances. The hotel charges kept appearing, always coded as business expenses. But I also noticed something else. Regular wire transfers from our joint savings account to an account I didn't recognize. $5,000 a month for the past 6 months. $30,000 total. Gone. I pulled the account number and did some digging. It wasn't difficult. I had access to our accountant's files, and I knew how to read a balance sheet. The account belonged to Morgan Hayes Development, LLC, the company they were building together. My husband was using our money I'd earned, money we'd saved for Oliver's college fund for our future, to invest in a business with the woman he was sleeping with. I sat at my desk that evening, staring at the numbers on my screen, and felt something inside me go very, very quiet. This wasn't just an affair. This was theft. This was my husband systematically dismantling our life together while smiling at me across the dinner table. I needed more information. That Saturday, while Daniel took Oliver to soccer practice, I did something I'd been planning for days. I went to Claire's apartment. She lived in a modern building in the Pearl District, one of those places with a doorman and floor-to-ceiling windows and monthly rent that cost more than most people's mortgages. I'd been there before, back when I still thought of her as my friend. Back when I didn't know that every time she smiled at me, she was thinking about my husband's hands on her skin. I still had the spare key she'd given me years ago. "In case of emergencies," she'd said. This felt like an emergency. The doorman recognized me. "Ms. Hayes, good to see you. Here to visit Ms. Morgan." "Just dropping something off," I said, holding up an empty gift bag I'd brought as a prop. "She's expecting it." He nodded and waved me through. I took the elevator to the 8th floor, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I'd never broken into anyone's home before. I'd never even considered it. But desperate times, my mother used to say, and all that. I unlocked Claire's door and stepped inside. The apartment was exactly as I remembered it. Sleek, minimalist everything in shades of white and gray. But now, looking at it with new eyes, I saw things I hadn't noticed before. A man's jacket hanging by the door, too big to be hers. Men's shoes by the entrance. Size 11, Daniel's size. A framed photo on the bookshelf, Claire and Daniel at what looked like a company event standing close together, his hand on the small of her back. I walked through the apartment, slowly cataloging everything. In her bedroom, I found one of Daniel's ties draped over a chair. In the bathroom, a man's razor. In the kitchen, his favorite brand of coffee, the expensive kind he always said we couldn't afford to buy regularly. But the most damning thing was in her home office. Spread across her desk were documents, contracts, property listings, financial projections, all for Morgan Hayes Development. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Page after page, every document, every email printout, every spreadsheet. And then I found something else. A journal. Leather-bound, expensive-looking, sitting on the corner of her desk. I knew I shouldn't read it. Knew it was crossing a line even I hadn't planned to cross. But I opened it anyway. The first entry was dated 18 months ago. Saw Daniel today at the office. He stayed late to work on the Riverside proposal. We ended up ordering takeout and working until midnight. He told me about his marriage, how Emma's always so capable, so strong, so independent that sometimes he feels like she doesn't need him at all. I didn't know what to say. I just listened. And when he finally left, I realized I'd been hoping he wouldn't. I flipped forward, skimming entries. We kissed today. I know I shouldn't have let it happen. But God, I've been so lonely for so long. And he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. When was the last time anyone looked at me like that? We slept together. I know it's wrong. I know Emma is my friend. But he said things haven't been right with her for years. He said she's more like a business partner than a wife. He said when he's with me, he feels like himself again. I think I'm falling in love with him, and I think he feels the same way. We've been talking about the future, about what it would look like if we were together, about Morgan Hayes Development and how we could build something real, something that's ours. And then, from 3 months ago, Daniel asked me if I ever feel guilty about Emma. The truth is I do, sometimes. But then I think about all those years watching her have everything, the perfect marriage, the beautiful child, the career she's so good at. She never struggled like I did. She never had to wonder if she was enough. And maybe that makes me a terrible person, but I can't help thinking, why does she get to have it all when I've had nothing? I closed the journal carefully and set it back exactly where I'd found it. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, not from sadness, from rage. Because Claire hadn't just betrayed me because she loved Daniel. She'd betrayed me because she resented me. Because she'd spent years comparing her life to mine and deciding that I didn't deserve what I had. And Daniel had fed her that narrative, had painted me as cold, as too independent, as someone who didn't need him. When the truth was I'd spent 10 years trying to be what he needed, trying to be strong when he was weak, trying to be soft when he needed comfort, trying to be everything. And it still hadn't been enough. I left Claire's apartment exactly as I'd found it, locked the door behind me, smiled at the doorman on my way out, drove home with my hands tight on the steering wheel and my jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. When I got home, Daniel and Oliver were in the driveway kicking a soccer ball back and forth. "Mom," Oliver ran over, his face flushed with happiness. "Dad says I scored 2 goals today." "That's amazing, sweetheart." I crouched down and hugged him tight, breathing in the scent of grass and sweat and childhood innocence. Over his shoulder, I saw Daniel watching us, smiling that easy smile that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made me feel cold. "How was your morning?" he asked. "Good," I said. "Ran some errands. Just soccer and bonding time with this guy." He ruffled Oliver's hair. We went inside. I made lunch. We ate as a family, Oliver chattering about his game, Daniel nodding and smiling and playing the role of devoted father. And I sat there thinking, how much longer can I do this? How much longer can I sit across from you and pretend I don't know? That night after Oliver was asleep, Daniel came to bed and reached for me. "Emma." He murmured, his hand on my waist. I went rigid. I couldn't help it. The thought of his hands on me, the same hands that touched her, made my skin crawl. He noticed, pulled back. "You okay?" "Headache," I said. "Sorry." "It's fine." He rolled over and within minutes he was asleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, and for the first time since I'd found that message, I cried. Not because I still loved him. I wasn't sure I did anymore. But because I'd lost something, I couldn't get back the ability to believe that people were who they said they were. The ability to trust that the life I'd built was real. And mourning that loss felt like mourning a death. The next morning, I called the one person I hadn't wanted to involve, my lawyer. Patricia Chen had handled some contracts for my company, and I'd always liked her sharp, no-nonsense, fiercely protective of her clients. She was also a specialist in family law. We met at her office Monday morning. "What can I do for you, Emma?" she asked, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "I need to know my options," I said, "for divorce." She didn't flinch, didn't ask questions, just pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. "How long have you been married?" 10 years. "Children?" 1. Oliver, he's 7. "Assets?" I listed everything. The house, our savings, Daniel's company, my retirement accounts, the cars, everything we'd built together over a decade. "And you're certain you want to proceed?" Patricia asked gently. "Not yet," I said. "But I want to be prepared. I want to know what I'm entitled to, what I can protect, what I can't." She nodded. "Washington is a community property state. Generally, everything acquired during the marriage is split 50-50. But if you can prove that marital assets were used inappropriately, say to fund a separate business or relationship, you may be able to claim more." "He's been transferring money to an account I didn't know about," I said. $5,000 a month, for 6 months. Patricia's eyebrows rose. "Do you have documentation?" "Yes." "Good. That helps your case considerably." We talked for another hour, about custody arrangements, about spousal support, about how to protect Oliver through the process. When I left her office, I had a folder full of documents to review and sign, and I had something else, a plan. I wasn't going to file for divorce yet, not until I had everything in place, but I was going to make sure that when I did, Daniel couldn't hide anything, couldn't claim ignorance, couldn't paint me as the villain. I was going to document everything, and then I was going to walk away with my head held high and my son protected, and they, Daniel and Claire, would be left to deal with the wreckage they'd created. That evening, Lily came over after Oliver went to bed. I told her I needed to talk, and she'd come immediately, bringing a bottle of wine and a box of takeout from our favorite Thai place. We sat in the living room eating pad Thai straight from the containers, and I told her everything I'd found. The journal, the money transfers, the business partnership, all of it. "Jesus Christ," Lily said when I finished. "Emma, I know. No, I mean, this isn't just an affair. This is fraud. He's been stealing from you. Technically, it's a joint account. He has every legal right to move money from it. That doesn't make it less shitty." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't." Lily set down her food and looked at me seriously. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. Part of me wants to burn it all down, send everything to his business partners, expose them both publicly, make sure everyone knows what they did. But that doesn't help Oliver, and it doesn't help me. It just makes me look vengeful." "You have a right to be vengeful." "Maybe, but I want to be smart more than I want to be vengeful." Lily nodded slowly. "So what's the smart play?" I thought about it, about everything I'd learned over the past few weeks, about Daniel's weakness for feeling needed, about Claire's jealousy, about the business they thought they were building. "I think," I said slowly, "the smart play is to let them think they've won. Let them think I'm still in the dark. And then when they're most comfortable, when they think they've gotten away with it, that's when I'll strike." "How?" "I'm still working that part out." Lily reached over and squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. 100%. "Thank you." We finished our wine in silence, and for a little while I didn't feel quite so alone. The following Thursday, I did something reckless. I followed them. I tracked Daniel's phone all day, watched that blue dot move from the office to lunch to meetings, and finally at 6:30 p.m. to the Maxwell Hotel. Claire's car was already in the parking garage when I arrived. I parked 3 floors up in a spot where I could see the entrance to the hotel, but wouldn't be immediately visible. Then I waited. I'm not sure what I expected to feel, sadness maybe, or rage, or some kind of cinematic heartbreak. Instead, I just felt numb. At 10 p.m., they emerged together. Daniel's hand was on the small of Claire's back. She was laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted up toward him, her whole body angled in his direction like a flower following the sun. They didn't kiss goodbye too public, too risky, but the intimacy between them was obvious in the way they moved together and the familiarity of their body language. I pulled out my phone and took a picture, added it to my folder. Then I drove home, beating Daniel by 20 minutes. When he arrived, I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. He undressed quietly, slipped under the covers, and within minutes was breathing the slow, steady rhythm of the guiltless. I lay awake for hours, staring at the dark ceiling, and thought, soon this will all be over. The next morning, I got an email from Patricia. The divorce documents were ready for my review. All I had to do was sign them, and she'd file. I didn't sign them yet, because I'd realized something. If I filed for divorce now, it would be a clean break. Community property. 50-50 split. Daniel would keep his company. Claire would keep her job. And they'd go on to build Morgan Hayes Development together, using the money they'd taken from our marriage. But if I waited, if I gathered just a little more evidence, I could do something better. I could make sure that when this ended, they both lost something they cared about. Not out of cruelty, out of justice. I spent the weekend researching Daniel's company. Hayes Interior Design was successful, but it wasn't financially stable. I knew this because I'd reviewed their books 6 months ago when Daniel asked me to help him apply for a business loan. The company was leveraged heavily. Daniel had taken out loans to finance expansion to hire new staff to bid on bigger projects. On paper, the company looked thriving. In reality, it was a house of cards. And if anything happened to damage the company's reputation, say a scandal involving the CEO misusing company resources for a personal affair, those cards would collapse. I didn't want to destroy the company. Oliver's future depended on it, at least partially. But I could damage it enough that Daniel's partners would take notice. Enough that they'd start asking questions about where company money had been going. Enough that Daniel would have to answer for his choices. And Claire worked for Hayes Interior Design. If the company suffered, so would she. It was risky. It was calculating. It was exactly the kind of thing that 6 weeks ago I would have said I'd never do. But 6 weeks ago, I'd been a different person. On Monday morning, I did something I'd never done before. I scheduled a meeting with Daniel's business partners. There were 3 of them, James, Richard, and Sarah. They owned 40% of the company collectively, with Daniel holding the remaining 60% as founder and CEO. I'd met them at company parties over the years. Friendly enough, professional. I called Sarah first. She was the most approachable, and I knew she'd been concerned about the company's finances lately. Emma? She sounded surprised but pleased. This is unexpected. What can I do for you? I was hoping we could meet, I said. There's something I need to discuss with you, about the company. Is everything all right? It's probably nothing, I said. But I'd prefer to talk in person. Would you have time this week? We met at a coffee shop Tuesday afternoon. Sarah arrived exactly on time, dressed in a sleek pantsuit, her expression curious but guarded. So, she said once we'd ordered drinks, what's this about? I'd rehearsed this conversation a dozen times. Knew exactly what I was going to say. I've been reviewing some financial documents, I said, and I've noticed some irregularities in how company funds have been allocated over the past 6 months. Sarah's expression sharpened. What kind of irregularities? Large transfers coded as business expenses that don't seem to match up with any projects I'm aware of. Regular payments to a hotel for client meetings that never appear on the company calendar. And significant investments into an outside business entity that I believe Daniel has a personal stake in. I slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of everything I'd found, the hotel charges, the wire transfers to Morgan Hayes Development, the business proposal I'd photographed at Claire's apartment. Sarah opened the folder and began reading. I watched the color drain from her face. Jesus Christ, she muttered. I thought the partners should know, I said quietly. I'm not trying to cause problems, but if company funds are being misused, that affects everyone's investment. Sarah looked up at me. Does Daniel know you're here? No. And you're bringing this to me because I thought you'd want to know the truth. And because whatever happens next, I want Oliver protected. This company is part of his future. Sarah nodded slowly. I appreciate you bringing this to me, Emma. This is serious. We'll need to do an audit. and we'll need to talk to Daniel." "I understand." "This is going to get messy," she warned. "I know." She studied me for a long moment. "How long have you known about the affair?" I shouldn't have been surprised that she'd put it together so quickly. Sarah was sharp. "A few weeks," I admitted. "I'm sorry." "Thank you." We finished our coffee, and I left her with the folder and a promise that she'd keep me updated. As I walked to my car, I felt something loosen in my chest. The dominoes were starting to fall. The audit happened fast. Within 3 days, Daniel's partners had hired a forensic accountant to review the company's books. Within a week, they'd found exactly what I'd known they would: systematic misuse of company funds transfers to Morgan Hayes Development that violated company policy, and enough evidence to suggest that Daniel had been using his position to benefit a personal business venture. I didn't tell Daniel any of this. I waited. On Friday evening, he came home late, looking drawn and exhausted. "Rough day?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "The partners called an emergency meeting," he said, pouring himself a drink. "They're doing a financial audit. Someone raised questions about company expenses." "That sounds stressful." "It's fine. There's nothing to worry about. Just routine stuff." He was lying, and we both knew it. But I didn't call him out. "I'm sure it'll be fine," I said. He drank his scotch in silence, staring out the window at the darkening sky, and I watched him and thought, you have no idea what's coming. The weekend passed in a strange, tense silence. Daniel was preoccupied, constantly checking his phone, making hushed calls from his office. Oliver noticed, asking me why Daddy seemed upset. "Just work stress, honey," I told him. "Nothing for you to worry about." On Sunday night, after Oliver was asleep, Daniel came to find me. I was in the bedroom folding laundry when he appeared in the doorway. "Emma," he said, "we need to talk." My heart kicked against my ribs, but I kept my expression neutral. "Okay." He sat on the edge of the bed, running his hands through his hair. "Something's happened at work. The audit, it's not routine. The partners think I've been misusing company funds." "Have you?" He looked at me sharply. "What? No. Of course not." I set down the shirt I'd been folding. "Then I'm sure the audit will prove that." "It's not that simple." He stood pacing. "There are transactions they're questioning. Investments in a development company. They think I've been diverting company resources." "Have you, Emma? Have you?" He stopped pacing, looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the moment he decided to lie. "No," he said. "But it's complicated. The development company, it's a side project, something I've been working on with Claire. But I used personal funds, not company money. Someone's gotten the wrong idea, and now everything's a mess." "With Claire," I repeated flatly. "She's heading up the marketing side. It's business, Emma. Nothing more." I looked at my husband and felt something inside me finally irrevocably break. "Daniel," I said quietly. "I know." He froze. "Know what?" "Everything." The color drained from his face. "I know about the affair." I continued, my voice steady. "I know about the hotel rooms. I know about Morgan Hayes Development. I know about the money you've been transferring from our joint account. I know you've been using my research to build a business with your mistress. I know all of it." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Emma, Don't." I held up a hand. "Don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't tell me it's not what it looks like. I have documentation. I have photographs. I have bank statements and emails and location data. I have everything." "How long have you known?" "Long enough." He sank onto the bed, his head in his hands. "Fuck. Emma, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. You made choices. Every day for months you made the choice to lie to me, to betray me, to use our money, our life, to build something with someone else. I don't love her," he said desperately. "It was just I felt lost. You're so strong, so capable, and I felt like you didn't need me anymore. Claire made me feel important," I finished for him. "Needed." He nodded miserably. "That's not my fault," I said. "I spent 10 years trying to be what you needed, trying to support you, to build a life with you. If you felt inadequate, that's something you should have talked to me about, not something you should have used as an excuse to fuck my best friend." He flinched at the crude language. "What happens now?" he asked. I picked up the folder from my nightstand. the one Patricia had prepared. Now you sign these. He took the folder, opened it, saw the divorce papers. Emma, please, can't we talk about this? Go to counseling, figure out no. But Oliver will be fine. Better than fine, actually, because he won't have to watch his parents pretend to be happy anymore. I'll fight this. You can try, I said, but you should know that your partners are aware of how you've been using company funds, and I've documented everything else. If you fight me, I'll make sure all of it becomes public record. Every detail, every lie, every hotel receipt. Is that really what you want? He stared at the papers in his hands. I'm not trying to destroy you, I said quietly. I'm just trying to leave with my dignity intact. Sign the papers. Give me primary custody of Oliver with reasonable visitation for you. Don't fight me on the financial settlement, and I won't make this uglier than it needs to be. What about Morgan Hayes? He asked quietly. The development company. That's between you, Claire, and your partners. I want nothing to do with it. He looked at me, then really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that might have been grief. I really have lost you, haven't I? You lost me the first time you lied, I said. Everything after that was just epilogue. Daniel signed the papers that night. I watched him do it, his hand shaking slightly as he wrote his name at the bottom of each page. When he finished, he looked up at me. What now? Now I call my lawyer and file in the morning. You have 30 days to move out. We'll work out a custody schedule that's fair to Oliver, and we'll both move on with our lives. Just like that? Just like that. He stood the papers clutched in his hand. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. You deserved better than this. Yes, I agreed. I did. He left the room, and I heard him climb the stairs to his office on the 3rd floor, the room that had become his refuge over the years, the place he went when he didn't want to be with me. I sat on the bed alone and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for weeks. It was done. The marriage was over. And tomorrow I'd start the process of building a life that was mine alone. The days after Daniel signed the papers felt surreal. I filed for divorce on Monday morning. Patricia submitted the paperwork to the courthouse, and by noon it was official our 10-year marriage was formally legally ending. Daniel moved out that weekend. He rented a furnished apartment downtown, something temporary, while he figured things out. He packed his clothes, his laptop, his books, and a few personal items. Everything else stayed. Oliver helped him load boxes into the car, chattering away, seemingly oblivious to the weight of what was happening. When Daniel's car finally pulled out of the driveway, my son stood beside me on the porch, waving. Will Daddy come back to visit? He asked. Of course, I said, crouching down to his level. This is still his home, too. He'll come see you all the time. We just won't be living together anymore. Like Mason's parents. Mason was a classmate whose parents had divorced last year. Yes, like Mason's parents. Oliver considered this. Mason says he gets 2 birthdays now, one with his mom and one with his dad. That's true. Some kids do. Cool, he said, and then ran off to play with his soccer ball in the backyard. I stood on the porch watching him go and marveled at the resilience of children. The company audit took another week to complete. When the results came in, they were damning. Daniel had transferred over $60,000 in company funds to Morgan Hayes Development over the past year. He'd charged personal hotel stays as business expenses. He'd used company resources, including employee time and company research, to develop a business plan that directly competed with Hayes Interior Design's client base. His partners were furious. Sarah called me to update me on the situation. We're forcing him to buy out our shares or sell the company, she said. He violated his fiduciary duty as CEO. We can't trust him anymore. What will he do? I don't know. Probably try to secure financing to buy us out. But with his personal finances in shambles from the divorce, I'm not sure any bank will approve him. And Claire? Terminated immediately, with cause. She'll be lucky if she doesn't get sued for her role in all of this. I should have felt vindicated. Should have felt some sense of justice being served. Instead, I just felt tired. Thank you for letting me know, I said. Emma, Sarah said quietly. I'm sorry this happened to you. For what it's worth, you handled it with more grace than most people would have. I'm not sure grace is the right word, I said. But thank you. Claire tried to contact me exactly once. It was a text message sent late on a Tuesday night 3 weeks after I'd filed for divorce. Emma, I know I have no right to ask this, but can we please talk? I need you to understand what happened. I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you. Please. I read the message 3 times. Then I blocked her number. There was nothing she could say that would change anything. No explanation that would make the betrayal acceptable. No apology that would heal what she'd broken. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. Lily moved in with me for a few weeks. She brought Mia her daughter, and the 2 girls took over the guest room, filling the house with noise and laughter, and a kind of chaotic energy that kept me from sinking too deep into my own thoughts. One evening after the kids were asleep, Lily and I sat on the back porch with glasses of wine watching the rain. "How are you really doing?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Some days I'm fine. Some days I feel like I'm drowning. Mostly I just feel numb. That's normal. You went through a trauma." "It doesn't feel like trauma. It just feels like waste. 10 years of my life gone. And for what? So Daniel could feel important. So Claire could prove she could take something from me." "It wasn't a waste," Lily said firmly. "You have Oliver. You learned what you're capable of. You learned you can survive anything." "Barely." "Emma," she turned to face me, "you discovered your husband was cheating with your best friend, and instead of falling apart, you meticulously documented everything, protected your assets, ensured your son's future, and got out with your dignity intact. That's not barely surviving. That's triumphing." I didn't feel like I'd triumphed. I felt like I'd simply survived. But maybe that was enough. A month after the divorce was filed, I got an unexpected message. It was an email from Daniel sent to my personal account, not the one we used to coordinate Oliver's schedule. The subject line read, "I need to explain." I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. "Emma, I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to ask for your time or your attention. But I need to say this even if you never respond. I didn't fall in love with Claire. I need you to know that. What happened between us wasn't about love. It was about ego. About feeling like I mattered. About feeling like I was good at something other than disappointing the people who loved me. You were always so strong, so capable, so sure of yourself. And I felt like I was drowning next to you. Like no matter what I did, I'd never measure up. Claire made me feel like I was enough. Not because she was better than you, she wasn't. She isn't. But because she needed me in a way you never seemed to. I'm not saying this to excuse what I did. There's no excuse. I betrayed you. I lied to you. I used our money and our life to build something that was never meant to include you. And I hate myself for it. The company's probably going to fold. The partners are forcing me out, and I don't have the capital to buy them out. Morgan Hayes Development died before it even started. Claire and I couldn't work together after everything fell apart. And honestly, I don't even care about the business anymore. I just care that I destroyed the one thing that actually mattered. You. Us. Our family. I know I can't fix this. I know you'll never forgive me. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. And that you were right. I lost you the first time I lied. Everything after that was just me being too much of a coward to admit it. Take care of yourself. Take care of Oliver. And maybe someday remember that there was a time when I loved you the way you deserved to be loved, even if I forgot how along the way. Daniel. I read the email twice. Then I closed my laptop and didn't respond. Because what was there to say? He was sorry. He understood what he'd lost. He was suffering the consequences of his choices. None of that changed anything. None of that brought back the trust that had been shattered. None of that erased the months of lies. None of that made me want to forgive him. Some apologies come too late to matter. "3 months after the divorce was filed, the decree became final. I was officially no longer Emma Hayes. I went back to my maiden name, Emma Chen, and it felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. The house was mine. The savings accounts were split, but I'd gotten the majority because of Daniel's financial misconduct. Oliver would live with me, primarily with Daniel getting him every other weekend and 1 night a week for dinner. It was fair. It was final. It was over. I celebrated by taking Oliver to the coast for a long weekend. We stayed in a small beach cottage, built sandcastles, flew kites, and ate too much ice cream. Oliver ran along the shoreline, chasing waves, and I sat on the sand and watched him and felt something inside me slowly start to unclench. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Daniel. I wasn't thinking about Claire. Wasn't thinking about betrayal or evidence or divorce proceedings. I was just watching my son be happy, and that I realized was enough. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Claire. It was completely by accident. I was at a professional conference downtown, one of those mandatory continuing education events for financial professionals. I just finished a session on new tax regulations and was heading to the coffee station when I saw her. She was standing by the registration desk, looking thinner than I remembered, her auburn hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She wore a gray suit that looked expensive, but somehow wrong on her, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's clothes. Our eyes met across the lobby. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she took a step toward me, and I saw her mouth start to form my name. I turned and walked away. I didn't run, didn't rush. Just calmly, deliberately walked in the opposite direction, collected my things, and left the conference early. Because I had nothing to say to her. No anger left to express. No curiosity about her life or her choices or whether she felt guilty. She had simply become irrelevant to me. And that more than any confrontation could have been felt like the truest form of closure. It was around this time that Oliver asked me a question that broke my heart. We were having dinner, just the two of us, pasta with his favorite marinara sauce, when he set down his fork and looked at me seriously. "Mom, did Dad stop loving us?" I put down my own fork carefully. "Why would you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because he doesn't live here anymore." And Mason said his dad left because he didn't want to be part of their family anymore. I reached across the table and took his small hand in mine. "Oliver, listen to me. Dad leaving had nothing to do with you. He loves you more than anything in the world. What happened between your dad and me, that's something that happens between adults sometimes. People grow apart. They make mistakes. But that has nothing to do with how much he loves you. Do you still love Dad?" I thought about how to answer that. About what truth he needed versus what truth would only confuse him. "I love the father he is to you," I said finally. "I love watching him play soccer with you. I love seeing how proud he is when you do well in school. But sometimes grown-ups can love each other in one way, but not be able to stay married. Does that make sense?" He thought about it, his face scrunched up in concentration. "I guess so. The important thing for you to know is that both your dad and I love you completely. That will never ever change. No matter what happens between us, you will always have two parents who think you're the best kid in the entire world." He nodded, seemingly satisfied, and went back to his pasta. But later that night, after I'd tucked him in and kissed his forehead and told him good night, I sat on the stairs outside his room and cried quietly. Because he shouldn't have had to ask that question. Shouldn't have had to wonder if he was loved. And the fact that Daniel's choices had made him doubt that even for a moment made me angrier than anything else had. I started seeing a therapist around month 7. Her name was Dr. Rachel Morrison, and she specialized in trauma recovery and post-divorce counseling. Lily had recommended her, and I'd resisted at first. I wasn't the kind of person who needed therapy, I told myself. I was handling things fine. But fine was starting to feel like another word for numb, and I was tired of feeling nothing. Our first session was awkward. I sat on her couch clutching a cup of tea I didn't drink and tried to explain what had happened without breaking down. "Take your time," Dr. Morrison said gently. She was in her 50s with kind eyes and a way of sitting that made you feel like she had all day to listen. I told her about the message on the phone, about the investigation, about the journal I'd found in Claire's apartment, about the divorce and the company audit and everything that had come after. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Emma," she said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When you discovered the affair, why didn't you confront them immediately?" "Because I needed evidence. I needed to be sure. I needed to protect myself and Oliver." "Those are all good reasons," she agreed. "But I wonder if there was another reason, too." "What do you mean?" "I wonder if part of you needed to stay in control, to prove to yourself that you could handle this without falling apart, that you could be the strong one, even when you'd been betrayed." I opened my mouth to disagree, to tell her she was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. because she was right. I couldn't let them see me broken, I said quietly. I couldn't give them that. But Emma, Dr. Morrison said gently, you were allowed to be broken. You were allowed to fall apart. Being strong doesn't mean never feeling pain. It means feeling the pain and surviving it anyway. And that's when I finally truly cried. Not the silent tears I'd shed alone in my bathroom, not the careful grief I'd allowed myself in small doses, but real ugly gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest and wouldn't stop. Dr. Morrison handed me tissues and sat quietly while I cried, and when I finally stopped, she said, "That's the bravest thing you've done through all of this. Crying, letting yourself feel it." Therapy helped. Over the next few months, I started to unpack things I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. The belief that I had to be perfect to be loved. The fear that showing vulnerability meant showing weakness. The way I'd spent 10 years trying to be everything Daniel needed instead of asking what I needed. You learned early that love was conditional, Dr. Morrison told me in one session, that you had to earn it by being strong, being capable, being useful. And when Daniel betrayed you, it confirmed what you'd always feared, that you weren't enough, just as you were. "But I am enough," I said, and for the first time I almost believed it. "You are," she agreed. "But that's something you need to prove to yourself, not to anyone else." So I started doing things for myself. I joined a yoga class, started painting again, something I'd loved in college, but had abandoned when life got busy. I read books that had nothing to do with finance or parenting or productivity, books that were just for pleasure. I let myself be imperfect. Let myself order takeout when I was too tired to cook. Let myself skip the dishes and watch trashy TV when I needed to zone out. Let myself be human instead of superhuman. And slowly, incrementally, I started to feel like myself again. Not the self I'd been before Daniel. Not the self I'd been during the investigation and divorce. But a new self. One who'd been through fire and come out changed, maybe scarred, but ultimately stronger. A year after the divorce was finalized, something unexpected happened. I ran into someone from my past. I was at a bookstore in Northwest Portland on a Saturday afternoon, one of those independent places with overstuffed chairs and the smell of coffee and paper. Oliver was at Daniel's for the weekend, and I'd decided to spend the day doing exactly what I wanted. I was browsing the fiction section when I heard a voice behind me. Emma Chen. I turned around and found myself face to face with Mark Sullivan. Mark, the guy I'd dated in college, the one who'd cheated on me with someone else, the one Claire had helped me get over spending hours listening to me cry and eating ice cream and telling me I deserved better. "Mark," I said, surprised. "Wow, hi." He looked older, we all did, I supposed. His dark hair was shot through with gray at the temples. He had lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at 22, but his smile was the same, warm and a little crooked. "It's been, 15 years, he said, something like that. "You look good. Really good." "Thanks. So do you." We stood there awkwardly for a moment, and then he said, "Do you have time for coffee? I'd love to catch up." I almost said no, almost made an excuse and left, but something made me say yes. We sat in the bookstore cafe and he told me about his life. He'd moved back to Portland 3 years ago after his divorce. He had 2 kids who lived with their mother in Seattle. He was working as an architect, designing sustainable housing. "I'm sorry about your divorce," I said. "That must have been hard." "It was," he admitted. "But it was also necessary. We'd been unhappy for years, just too stubborn to admit it." "I know that feeling." "I heard you got divorced too," he said carefully. "Through mutual friends. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was the right decision." We talked for over an hour, and it was surprisingly easy. We'd been kids when we dated, really too young to know what we wanted, too inexperienced to navigate the complications of real relationships. But now, as adults who'd both been broken and rebuilt, we understood each other in a way we never could have back then. When we finally stood to leave, Mark pulled out his phone. "Can I get your number? I'd like to do this again sometime." "If you're interested." I hesitated. Not because I didn't like Mark, but because I wasn't sure I was ready for this. For dating. For letting someone new into my life. But then I thought about what Dr. Morrison had said. You don't have to be healed to start living again. You just have to be willing to try. "Sure," I said, and gave him my number. Mark and I started seeing each other casually after that. Coffee dates, walks in the park. One memorable evening at a comedy show where we laughed until our sides hurt. It wasn't intense. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was just nice. And nice, I was learning, was underrated. One evening, about 2 months into whatever we were doing, we were having dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant when Mark said, "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Your ex-husband, are you over him?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't think about him much anymore," I said honestly. "I don't miss him. I don't wish things had been different. Mostly I just feel relieved that it's over." "That's not quite the same as being over him," Mark said gently. "No," I agreed. "I guess it's not, but I think that's okay. I don't think you ever fully get over someone who was part of your life for 10 years. You just learn to carry it differently." He nodded. "I get that. What about you?" "Your ex-wife. Same. I don't love her anymore, but I can't pretend those years didn't happen. She's the mother of my children. We built a life together even if it didn't last. That matters, even if it's over." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "I like this," I said finally. "What we're doing. But I need you to know that I'm not looking for someone to fix me. I'm not looking for someone to fill a hole or make me forget what happened. I'm just looking for someone to have coffee with and laugh with and maybe build something new with if it feels right." "Good," Mark said, "because I'm not looking to fix anyone either. I'm just looking for someone worth showing up for." And somehow that felt like exactly the right answer. "18 months after my divorce was finalized, I had an unexpected encounter. I was picking Oliver up from Daniel's apartment. It was Sunday evening, the end of his weekend, and when Daniel opened the door, he looked different. Smaller somehow, more tired. The swagger he used to carry had dimmed into something quieter. "He's almost ready," Daniel said, stepping aside to let me in. "Just packing up his backpack." I waited in the living room while Oliver gathered his things. The apartment was neat but impersonal, like a hotel room someone had been living in too long. "How's he been?" I asked. "Good. We went to the Science Museum yesterday. He loved the dinosaur exhibit. He told me he's been talking about it all week." An awkward silence fell between us. "Emma," Daniel said finally, "can I say something?" "I'd rather you didn't." "Please, just let me say this." I sighed. "Fine." He sat down on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped between his knees. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need you to know that losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me." "Daniel, I'm not asking you to take me back," he said quickly. "I know that ship has sailed, but I need you to know that I understand now what I threw away. You were everything I should have wanted, and I was too stupid and too selfish to see it." "What happened with Claire?" I asked, surprising myself. "It ended," he said simply. "Right after everything fell apart. Turns out a relationship built on lies and betrayal doesn't have much foundation. We tried to salvage Morgan Hayes' development, but neither of us could trust the other. Funny, right? The two people who destroyed your trust couldn't trust each other." "Karma," I said without sympathy. "Yeah." He looked at me. "I heard you're seeing someone, Mark Sullivan." I stiffened. "How did you know that?" "Oliver mentioned it. Said you brought a friend to his soccer game." "We're taking things slow," I said carefully. "And I'd appreciate it if you didn't make Oliver feel like he has to report on my personal life." "I didn't. He just talks. You know how he is." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I'm glad, actually, that you're moving on. You deserve to be happy." "I am happy," I said. "Not because of Mark, just because." "That's good." He stood. "I really am sorry, Emma, for all of it. And I'm grateful that you've been fair about custody, that you've let me stay in Oliver's life. A lot of people wouldn't have been so generous." "I didn't do it for you," I said. "I did it for him. He deserves a father, even if that father made terrible choices." Oliver came bounding into the room, then backpack slung over one shoulder, full of energy and stories about his weekend. As we drove home, I thought about what Daniel had said. He was sorry. He understood what he'd lost. He was suffering the consequences. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even pity. Just nothing. Because he'd become a stranger to me. Someone I used to know. Someone I'd once loved. But not someone who had any claim on my emotions anymore. And that I realized was the truest sign that I'd moved on. 2 years after I'd found that message on Daniel's phone, I was sitting on my back porch on a Sunday morning drinking coffee and watching Oliver play in the yard. The house was quiet, peaceful, mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Good morning, coffee later." I smiled and typed back, "Can't. Oliver has a game at 2, but tomorrow, perfect. I'll pick you up at 10. I set the phone down and took another sip of coffee. Lily had asked me once if I thought I'd ever trust anyone again. If I'd ever be able to open myself up fully after what Daniel and Claire had done. I told her I didn't know. But sitting there that morning, I realized the answer was yes. Not because I'd forgotten what happened. Not because I'd forgiven the unforgivable, but because I'd learned something crucial. Other people's betrayal said everything about them and nothing about me. I hadn't been betrayed because I was unlovable or inadequate or too strong or not strong enough. I'd been betrayed because the people I'd trusted had been weak, had been selfish, had chosen the easy comfort of deception over the hard work of honesty. And that wasn't my burden to carry. One afternoon, about 6 months after my coffee with Mark, Oliver came home from school with a question. "Mom, do you think Dad and you will ever get back together?" We were sitting at the kitchen table working on his math homework fractions, which he hated. "No, sweetheart," I said gently. "We won't. Mason's parents got back together," he said, "after they were divorced for a year. That's wonderful for Mason, but every family is different. Your dad and I are better apart than we were together. But don't you get lonely?" I thought about that, about the quiet evenings after he went to bed, about sleeping alone in a king-sized bed, about making decisions without consulting anyone else. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but lonely isn't the same as alone. And I'm not really alone. I have you, I have Aunt Lily, I have friends, and I have myself." "That's weird," Oliver said, wrinkling his nose. I laughed. "Yeah, I guess it is. But what I mean is I don't need another person to make me whole. I'm already whole. If I meet someone and want to share my life with them, that's great. But I don't need that to be happy. Are you happy, Mom?" I looked at my son, 7 years old, wise beyond his years, concerned about his mother's happiness in a way that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. "Yes," I said, and meant it. "I really am." He considered this, then went back to his fractions. "Okay, good." And just like that, the conversation was over. But the question stayed with me. Was I happy? Yes. Not the uncomplicated happiness I'd imagined in my 20s when I thought marriage and family and stability would equal contentment, but a deeper happiness, one that came from knowing myself, from surviving something that should have broken me, from building a life that was mine alone and finding it sufficient. The final piece of closure came unexpectedly 3 years after the divorce. I was at a professional networking event, one of those evenings where people in suits drink wine and exchange business cards and pretend to be interested in each other's careers. I was talking to a potential client when I saw her across the room. Claire. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, darker. She'd gained weight, not a lot, but enough to change her silhouette. She wore a professional dress that looked off the rack, not designer. She was alone, standing by the bar, scrolling through her phone with the air of someone who was there out of obligation rather than desire. Our eyes met. And this time I didn't look away. I excused myself from my conversation and walked over to her. "Claire," I said. She looked up and I saw something in her eyes, fear maybe, or shame. "Emma, I didn't know you'd be here." "It's a professional event. I'm a professional." "Not that surprising." She flinched. "Right. Of course." We stood there in uncomfortable silence. "How have you been?" I asked, not because I cared, but because it seemed like the thing to say. "Fine. Good. I'm working for a small marketing firm in Beaverton. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills." "That's good." "And you?" "I'm well. Oliver's thriving. Work is busy. Life is good." She nodded, looking down at her drink. "I'm glad. You deserve that. Another silence. Emma, she said quietly, I know I have no right to say this, but I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I hate myself for what I did to you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd lost more than I had. I'd lost a cheating husband and a false friend. She'd lost her integrity, her reputation, her career, and whatever twisted thing she'd had with Daniel. I believe you, I said, but it doesn't matter. What you did to me says everything about who you are and nothing about who I am, and I've made peace with that. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, because I don't have any to give. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I turned to walk away, then stopped. Claire, can I give you some advice? Okay. Stop comparing your life to other people's. Stop thinking you deserve what they have just because they have it. Build something that's actually yours, and maybe you'll find that's enough. I didn't wait for her response. I just walked away, back into the crowd, back into my life. And I didn't look back. That night, after Oliver was asleep and the house was quiet, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine and my journal. Dr. Morrison had suggested I write down my feelings when the divorce first happened. I'd resisted at first, but over time it had become a ritual, a way of processing, of documenting, of making sense of chaos. I opened to a blank page and wrote, 3 years ago I discovered my husband was having an affair with my best friend. I thought that discovery would break me. I thought I'd never recover from that level of betrayal. But I did recover. And not just recover, I rebuilt. I learned that strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about falling apart and then carefully, deliberately putting yourself back together into something new. I learned that closure doesn't always come from confrontation or apologies. Sometimes it comes from simply deciding that someone no longer gets to occupy space in your emotional life. I learned that I don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love. I don't need to be strong every moment of every day. I'm allowed to be human. And most importantly, I learned that I am enough, just as I am, without a partner to complete me, without validation from people who betrayed me, without proving anything to anyone. I am enough, and that's the most important discovery of all. I closed the journal and sat there in the dark, listening to the rain that had started to fall, Portland rain, constant and familiar. Somewhere across the city, Daniel was probably in his apartment alone with his regrets. Somewhere else, Claire was probably wondering how her life had gone so wrong. And I was here in my home, at peace with myself and my choices. I thought about Mark, who I'd see tomorrow for brunch, about the easy companionship we'd built, the way he made me laugh, the way he understood that I was complete without him, but chose to be with him anyway. I thought about Oliver sleeping upstairs, who would wake up tomorrow full of energy and questions, and that unshakable belief that his mother could do anything. I thought about Lily, who'd stood by me through everything, who'd never once said, "I told you so," who just loved me through the worst of it. And I thought about myself. Emma Chen, 38 years old, divorced single mother survivor. I'd been through fire. I'd been betrayed by the people I trusted most. I'd had to rebuild my entire life from the foundation up. And I'd done it. Not perfectly, not without scars, but I'd done it. The rain continued to fall, and I sat there in the darkness and I smiled. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. You don't need someone else to light up your life. Sometimes you just need to find the strength to be your own light. And once you do, you realize you were never in darkness at all. You were just learning how to shine. Epilogue. 5 years after the divorce. I'm standing in the backyard of my house. Our house, I should say, watching Oliver play soccer with Mark's kids. He's 12 now, all gangly limbs and braces and opinions about everything. Mark is at the grill flipping burgers, laughing at something Lily said. She's here with Mia, who's 9 now, and following Oliver around like a puppy. It's Oliver's birthday. A small party, just family and a few close friends. I watch them all, this patchwork family we've built, and feel something warm settle in my chest. Mark and I got married last year. Nothing dramatic, just a small ceremony at the courthouse with Oliver and his kids as witnesses. We'd both been married before. We didn't need the fairy tale. We just needed the commitment. And it's good. Not perfect, nothing ever is, but good. He doesn't try to replace Daniel as Oliver's father. Doesn't try to be anything other than who he is, a kind man who loves me and respects my son, and understands that some scars never fully fade. Daniel is here too, actually, standing awkwardly by the fence talking to Oliver's coach. We'd agreed he should be at his son's birthday, even if it meant sharing space with my new husband. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but we're adults. We manage. After the affair, after the company almost went under, Daniel sold Hayes Interior Design and took a position as a senior designer at a larger firm. He's stable now, reliable. He sees Oliver regularly, and to his credit, he's become a better father through all of this. Not a better husband, but a better father. Claire, I don't know where she is. Don't care, honestly. She's become one of those people who exists in my past but has no presence in my present. A ghost I've stopped being haunted by. Oliver runs over breathless and grinning. Mom, can we do cake now? In a few minutes, sweetheart. Let everyone finish eating first. But I'm 12. That's like basically a teenager. Basically, I agree, ruffling his hair. He runs off, and I'm left standing there watching my life unfold. And I think about that night 3 years ago when I sat on this same porch and wrote in my journal that I was enough. I still believe that. But I've also learned something else. Being enough on your own doesn't mean you can't choose to share your life with someone. It just means you're doing it from a place of wholeness, not neediness. Mark comes over, slides an arm around my waist. You okay? Yeah, I say. Just thinking. About how strange life is. How you think you have everything figured out and then it all falls apart. And then you rebuild, and the rebuilt version is somehow better than the original ever was. He kisses my temple. Deep thoughts for a kid's birthday party. I laugh. I contain multitudes. Yes, he agrees. You do. The afternoon stretches on. We eat cake. Oliver opens presents. The kids run around shrieking while the adults drink wine and talk about mortgages and school districts and all the mundane, beautiful things that make up a life. As the sun starts to set and people begin to leave, Daniel comes over to say goodbye. Thanks for letting me be here, he says. Oliver wanted you here, so you're here. He nods, glances at Mark, then back at me. You look happy, Emma. Really happy. I am. Good. That's good. There's a moment where I think he might say more, might try to apologize again or explain or dig up the past, but he doesn't. He just says goodbye, hugs Oliver, and leaves. And I watch him go and feel absolutely nothing. No anger, no regret, no lingering pain, just nothing. Because he's part of my past, but he's not part of my present. And I've finally truly made peace with that. Later that night, after everyone's gone and Oliver's asleep and Mark's dozed off on the couch, I sit on the back porch one more time. The rain has started again. It always does in Portland. And I listen to it tap against the roof, steady and relentless and somehow comforting. I think about the woman I was 5 years ago, the one who found that message on her husband's phone, the one who spent weeks gathering evidence and planning her escape, the one who was so determined to be strong that she forgot it was okay to be broken. I think about everything I've learned since then, about resilience and forgiveness and the difference between the two, about how you can be whole and still have cracks, about how sometimes the best revenge is just living well. And I think about the future, about Oliver growing up, about building a life with Mark, about whatever comes next. I'm not afraid anymore. Not of being alone, not of being betrayed, not of falling apart, because I know now that I can survive anything, that I can take the worst thing that ever happened to me and turn it into the catalyst for becoming someone stronger, someone wiser, someone more authentically myself. The rain continues to fall, and I sit there in the dark, at peace, and smile. Because I learned the truth that some people spend their whole lives searching for, you don't need anyone else to complete you. You just need to find the courage to be complete on your own. And once you do, everything else, love, family, happiness, becomes a choice rather than a necessity. And that makes all the difference. And that's where Emma's story ends, or rather where her new beginning truly starts. Emma learned something that many of us spend a lifetime searching for. You don't need anyone else to complete you. You just need the courage to be complete on your own. And once you find that courage, everything else, love, happiness, peace becomes a choice rather than a necessity. If Emma's story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your support helps us continue bringing these meaningful stories to life. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more inspiring stories about resilience, redemption, and the strength of the human spirit. We upload new stories every week. Drop a comment below and let us know. What would you have done in Emma's situation? Have you ever had to choose between confrontation and quiet dignity? Your stories matter, and we love hearing from you. And remember, betrayal doesn't define you. How you rise from it does. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourself. Protect your peace, and never forget you are enough, just as you are.